Hi, so welcome to Project Warhammer again, and it's going to be a bit of a transition here. So I've played my first game of Age of Sigmar after reading about it and watching lots of other stuff and hoping I get it right. And it was 1,000 points on my Nighthaunt, and it was against 1,000 point Seraphon army. So I'll go over my thinking in terms of how I built the army in a moment, and go over what actually happened. And this will sort of be the last in this series of Project Warhammer, but there will be other ones coming up, not in ages either, you know, straight away basically, because obviously now that Project Warhammer has happened, it's veered along the way and it's changed direction, but ultimately it was all about getting ready to be able to play Age of Sigmar. Well, now I've played it, so I'll be looking forward to hopefully trying to get other games, preferably on a weekly basis if that's at all possible, and building up other armies as well and getting some variety into there. So in terms, but I'll talk more about the end in terms of other things I'm going to be doing. So first of all, I'll do a video specifically on this, but this was my crib sheet, the cheat sheet. One thing I've noticed in a lot of battle reports is people just forgetting silly things. Now, I have to say, I didn't use it perfectly. There were a couple of little things I got wrong as well in the battle, but not a lot, and I wasn't really forgetting a lot of things because I had this. And the way, I'll go through the roster first of all. So I had a Knight of Shrouds on Ethereal Steed. In fact, what I'll do, I'll put up the deployment. You can tell I've thought about this all in advance. So this is how we deployed. We rolled the worst possible battle plan you could do. The 3 places of power, which are 3 objectives where you can only capture them if you get a hero within 3 inches of it. And then if they leave, they no longer capture it, or if they're killed, they no longer capture it. And all messy. Put it this way, I'll just give you a little bit of a spoiler. No one scored any victory points because neither of us could be asked to put a hero on it. We just mugged each other. So we just played it as a big old pitch battle, really, completely ignoring the objectives. But hey-ho. So what I've got here, as you can see, well, you can't see, but I'll tell you anyway. The black coach is the most visible there. Knight of Shrouds on Ethereal Steed, Hex Wraith and Spirit Host. You think, well, that's quite small. There were 2 other units. So I had my unit of Banshees and my Guardian of Souls, my wizard, who set up in the Underworlds, which means they're set up as a reserve. Now, what I did is, at the start, I won the roll-off to decide who gets to deploy first. Didn't make a huge amount of difference because I had altogether 6 units, and my opponent, as we can see there, had 7. So I thought it really doesn't matter whether I start deploying first or whether he does. I'm going to finish deploying first and therefore get to choose who takes the first turn. So that straight away was a bit of an advantage, having fewer units. And so I took advantage by allowing my opponents, asking my opponents to start deploying first. The reason for that is, you've got a general plan with this. And what my general plan with this army was, it's loosely based on what I'd eventually like to do in 2,000 points, but only with 2 segments. One is a fast section of cavalry, so the black coach and the hex wraiths there, to be able to move into something very, very quickly and get attacking. The other part of it is my assassination squad, my death squad, and of course they're going to set up in reserve in the hope that they can set up and charge straight into a weak portion of the unit. But quite frankly, against my Banshees, lots of things are weak. They're a super assassination squad, as we'll go over. And I set, in terms of relics as well, I gave my general, who isn't naturally a wizard, the Midnight Tome, so he became a wizard. So I had 2 wizards. I like my magic, so I had 2 wizards in this army. And I also gave him the battle trait, which means that in my hero phase, I can raise D3 slain models, friendly models, useful for hex rates, multi-wound models, really good for bringing those back. The black coach gets a similar ability as soon as it levels up. And at the start of the battle phase before we deployed, I managed to get my black coach to level 1. You roll 3d6, and for every 4 plus you get, you go up a level. So I only got 1 4 plus, but it's all right. Better than nothing. So I went up a level, so it wasn't terribly useful to begin with. So my opponent had a Slan, which is their wizard. Actually, I always think that's really unfair in terms of the Slan, because it's allowed to cast 3 spells, but realistically, he could only cast 2, because it gets Arcane Bolt, Mystic Shield, your standard 2, then it gets its own personal spell, which a lot of wizards do, but that's useless unless you're against demons. I don't have any demons, so it's pointless. Now, with most armies, with battle tomes, I think it's because Seraphon's an old battle tome, you have your own little lore. So you pick a spell from there as well. Well, they don't get to do that. So the only way they'd get to pick another spell is if we were playing on one of the realms. But, you know, we're both getting into Age of Sigmar, so we didn't do that. So it was a real bugger, really. I thought it was bad design. But anyway, never mind. So we had a Slanny, had an Engine of the Gods, which I'd not seen before. So I've not got the Seraphon Battle Tome. I don't really know a lot about it. I'd seen him play a couple of games against a Sylvaneth player, slightly different army here. So I'd not really seen the Engine. I didn't know what it did, but it looks scary. Big old Stegosaurus type thing, or a Triceratops or something like that. A big old dinosaur with something on its back, which I didn't like the look of. A couple of units of Skinks, Saurus Warriors, Saurus Knights, a riding cold one, and the Pterodon Riders. And that rounded his army out. So what I did is I deployed my Black Coach first, because as soon as he deployed the Slan there, I think, right, Black Coach, straight down the middle, bang. Because I thought at this point, I wanted to take out the Slan first with my Banshees, if I could. And I thought at this point, either he's going to surround his Slan so I can't get my Banshees into it, but then that means his army is going to be based around that Slan, in which case Black Coach, bang, straight up the middle. Or he's going to move his army somewhere else, in which case the Black Coach isn't going to be ideal there, but I'll be able to get my Banshees in, never mind. Black Coach is really fast, can easily change course. So what I did, I deployed the Black Coach, then I deployed, I think, the Hex Wraiths as he started deploying as well, the Spirit House, maybe, I can't remember the exact order. And then a bit later on I said, right, the Banshees, the Guardian of Souls, are going to deploy in reserve, explain what that meant. So then it was time for the first turn. Now, the person who finishes deploying first gets to choose who goes first, and I elected to let my opponent go first. The simple reason being, if you look at it, what can he do in his first turn? He hasn't got anything that's going to quickly go and grab those objectives, so he's not going to get early victory points. And secondly, he hasn't got a lot of long-range artillery, anything like that, so I'm not going to get the crap blown out of me either. All he can realistically do is move and cast a Mystic Shield, something like that, with his Slan. That's basically it. And indeed, that's all he could really do. So this is a rough mock-up, by the way. The battlefield here isn't exactly as it looks. I'll show you a couple of photos later on. Unfortunately, when I was taking photos, most of them are a bit blurry. I'm going to have to basically put it on a tripod, I think, and try and put it somewhere so it's not in the way to take better photos in future. But there was plenty of terrain on this, but you'll see that in the photo. Nothing that worries me, of course, because I'm fly. So it's only really a line of sight issue. And he moved things upwards, including his Slan, which I was very pleased at. Because if he hadn't moved his Slan up, I'd have had no chance of being able to get my Banshees into a position where it's just over 9 inches away. And therefore give me a realistic chance of a charge. But I was able to do it. Only just. They had to line up along the back, but only just. But I was able to do it. But so the first turn from the Seraphon here was pretty much just moving up. I'm not going to promise this is absolutely perfect for where they move, by the way, but it's a rough idea. So then it was time for my turn, which I'll show you in a couple of bits. So first of all, what I did is I just moved everything up. So the Banshees appeared there, the Guardian of Souls appeared there, the Hex Wraiths moved up, my General moved up, Black Coach moved up, Spirit Host moved up towards the Pterodon Riders, with the intention of then just charging with everything against loads of stuff. Didn't all work perfectly. So the cavalry were easily able to get into there because they were able to move far enough up. They'd already moved forward. The Spirit Host failed their charge, so they were just stuck there like lemons. But both the Guardian of Souls and the Banshees were able to charge into the Slan. Now, bear in mind, if you start just over 9 inches away, that means you need a charge roll of 9 on 2d6. The average on 2d6 is, of course, 7, so you're a little bit lucky to do that. To do it with both of them, wow. And the Banshees, I believe it was, got like 11 or something. If with a Nighthaunt army, if you roll a charge of 10 or more, you get to have a free round of combat in the charge phase and still get to do your normal combat in the combat phase as well. And these Banshees are my killers. They are assassins par excellence. But the way I've devised the army as well is I'm not just putting units for this, oh, this unit will be good for this, this unit will be good for this. It's units that work well in coordination. So they've got buffs, these Banshees. So normally what the scary side of a Banshee is, their attacks have -2 rend. So they can be nasty even against big, powerful things with a good armor save. They do D3 wounds. That's pretty scary. There's 8 of them in this unit. I couldn't get all of them into combat with the slang because, as I say, they'd had to snake out away. So there's only a few of them I could get in range, but that didn't matter. The saving grace when faced against Banshees is they only have 1 attack. But my Knight of Shrouds on Ethereal Steed, he has a command ability, which means that a unit within 18 inches, I can give them +1 attack. That straight up doubles the potency of the Banshees. +1 attack to something that has 1 attack is amazing, because that's double. And that's what I did. And the Guardian of Souls, also, the reason why he's up there, because you think to yourself, well, not deploying him meant I wasn't able to cast a spell right from the start. And all right, the only spell I'd realistically be able to cast anyway is Mystic Shield, but still, is because he provides a buff for units within 9 inches, gives them +1 to wound. So that's why he's with there, to buff my assassins. And he's no slouch himself when it comes to it. So I absolutely mugged the Slann, put it that way. I mugged that Slann. So, you know, just after that, there wasn't really a lot left of it. So this is the photo sort of just after that point. You can sort of see over in the top corner the Banshees and the Guardian of Souls surrounding nothing at all, because it's where a Slann used to be. The next target you can see to the right as we look at, which is that big nasty Engine of the Gods looking thing, which it turned out, because I had no idea what it did, it turned out it has like a ranged attack which can do, I think, mortal wounds, but on the first turn it was out of range. And another reason for me wanting to go second was because if I went first, all I could do is charge up. Now I'd put it in range, but I didn't really know exactly what it did. That would have been quite nasty. But the other thing is, by going second, for the second turn, I get to win ties when we roll to see who turn goes first. I can have a decent chance of a double turn, so going first. We can also see there that the Black Coach and my General did a bit of a number on those Saurus Knights. There were about 10 of them to start with, I think, so that did those in. The Hex Race were getting stuck in to the Saurus Warriors to the left there. The Skinks just sort of milling around. You can see my Spirit Host towards the bottom right-hand corner and the wing of the Pterodon just there as well. And so then we rolled. First of all, I rolled the Black Coach to see levels, and I got 3 4+, so I went straight up to level 4. So that was a lot of nice little things. So now not only could I heal wounds on the Black Coach itself, you can see a wound die by the Black Coach there. That was instantly healed. I can also raise slain models where there weren't any slain models in my army for it, or within range of it anyway. But one of the Banshees did die, but my Knight of Shrouds also had something to raise those back up, the battle trait. So the Banshee came back. So all my army at this point was completely intact. You know, there was a wound on the Hex Wraith there, but you know, all the models were there and fine. At this point, it's not looking great for the Seraphon. And so we'll get on to what I actually then did. I did actually win to choose who goes next in Battle Round 2. Obviously I did. I took the double turn to completely finish off what I was in combat with and to be able to charge that Engine of the Gods, which is what I did with my Guardian of Souls and Banshees. This was a much easier process now because they were very much close enough to be able to do that without, well, I could just move very close to them and then just easily charge them. The Spirit Host did charge the Pterodon Riders. The Black Coach and my General finished off the Saurus Knights. The Hex Race finished off the Saurus Warriors. So at the end of it, it's like you're looking at this and you're thinking it's a Seraphon player. Ew, really. It's not looking pleasant at all after 2 turns. I think the main thing is against Nighthaunt, small numbers of little bitty attacks aren't going to do a lot, because not only can I heal a lot of wounds up, and I have to tell a slightly funny story here in a moment, but I've got an unmodifiable 4+ save. What scares the bejesus out of me is, first of all, artillery. That Engine of the Gods, if that had ever been in range of me to be able to shoot at me, I would have been worried, you know, if in the event I was able to manage it, because I sort of knew from the start I had fewer units. That meant I could make my opponent go first. By making my opponent go first, I have a better than 50% chance of going first in battle round 2 as well, having the double turn. And that wasn't guaranteed to be enough because remember, I had to be a bit lucky to be able to charge and kill the Slann. If I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have been able to charge the engine for the next turn, and then it would have been able to shoot at me, and that wouldn't have been necessarily very nice. I'm not saying it would have laid waste to me, but it wasn't. I need to look up the rules actually just to see how nasty it is. But then we were looking up some details about some other things after the game. There are some units in there that are proper nasty against my army. I think he's going to go away and get some of those. But yeah, as it is, small basic attacks. The fact that I was able to wipe out both of his heroes at this point also means that he can't possibly score any victory points, no matter what happens now. If you roll 6s for everything and 1s on all his saves, it doesn't really matter. So anyway, that was the situation as that turned out. So the Seraphon player in turn 2, he retreated with his Pterodon Risers over my Spirit House, dropping bombs, I think, as well. Skinks charged in. His other Skinks ran away from the Hex Wraiths because they didn't fancy that. Now, what I know they have, because he's used this against the Sylvaneth player, what he generally intends with his Skinks is that if something charges them, then when it's their turn in the combat, so if they get to go before the charging unit decides to tackle them, they can just make a retreat move, so they can keep taunting you away. So that's what I think he was planning to do at that point. At the end of turn 2, we rolled to see who went first. Of course, this time he would win ties. He did get to go next because at this point as well, my Spirit House were left with one model with 1 wound left, and he was desperate to kill it. He went, "I'll kill a unit," and my Black Coach was in range to be able to raise up D3 slain models, so a very good chance of bringing the two lost Spirit House back again. I could do nothing about the wounds on the 1 remaining, but I could bring 2 more back. That would have been quite dispiriting for him. But in order to do that, I had to win the thing for turn 3. I'm actually looking at this, and I said on the previous one that my Black Coach got straight all the way up to level 4. On the previous turn, it didn't. It got to level 3, actually, now that I look at my notes. And now it got to level 4. Not that that made any real difference, because at this point, obviously, there's nothing left of the army. But my opponent, the Seraphon, got to go first, so he finished off the Spirit House. Oh yeah, I was going to tell you as well. Yeah, before this happened on the turn, in my turn 2 hero phase, I was moaning a bit actually, because my Guardian of Souls has a really nice spell which can heal up D6 wounds or bring back D6 wounds worth of models if you can get it off. And given that there was no way he could unbind it, all I had to, because I'd killed the wizards, the only wizard off. So the only way he could stop it, or it could be stopped, is if I didn't make the casting roll. So I'm there going, got this bloody spell, you can't unbind it, and I ain't got anything to use it on. And he just says sarcastically, "Oh, 1,000 apologies for not doing enough damage to your army." Oh dear. Anyway, so this was the situation. The Pterodon Riders moved over there to take some pot shots at the Hex Wraiths. The Skinks, these Skinks at the top, wanted to take some pot shots at the Hex Wraiths as well. And the other Skinks, I don't know what they did. I suspect something would have happened because they weren't on the objective. They were before and they weren't then, so I've forgotten where they moved, so I just sort of left them there. So this is sort of what it was starting to look like. You can see my opponent in the process of moving Skinks away at this point. So I'm not quite sure that this image is exactly at this point. But everything else is basically got to the right. There are more Skinks, which are just off shot. But that's basically it. That's what there is. Carnage at the moment. And so then in my turn 3. Now, here's where I got something wrong. I was quite naughty. But in the end, it sort of cancelled out with a stupid thing I did. So you can see I've charged my Guardian of Souls and the Banshees into the Skinks. The thing is, I'd run them first, so I can't run and charge, but I completely forgot that I run them. So that was a bit, oops, and no one noticed that. So maybe I need to put markers down for things that have run, so I don't do that in future. However, that being said, For some reason, there were some woods that they were moving around, and they ran around them. And I don't know why, because I can fly. Well, it doesn't matter anyway, because, see, the thing is, this is the problem. Although I've read all the rules and I sort of know, when someone asks me them, I can recall them. Just intuitively, I sometimes am back in fantasy battle days when actually chomping through a wood would slow you right down. But I can fly, so it made no difference anyway, so it was double stupidity. I could have just gone straight through the wood, and I still would have been in a position to charge them. So there was no way. So it cancelled out. I didn't get an advantage. Plus, at this point of the game anyway, it's buggered. Now, I know the position wasn't there, because if you look at the position there, it looks like the Guardian of Souls is indeed at an objective and would score a victory point at the end of this turn, but he wasn't. He wasn't within 3 inches of it. So I've got the position slightly wrong here. And what I did, because I was thinking in terms of the skinks running away, and remember, I don't know the rules exactly. I think, as my opponent said, he has to wait for his... So, as I charged, if I chose to attack the skinks with one of those units, he could do nothing. But when it was his turn to do something with the skinks, he could choose to retreat. That's one of their things. So what I did is I completely surrounded them. Well, there's nowhere for them to go now. Because they wouldn't be able to... Or the plan was they wouldn't be able to retreat far enough to get all the models more than 3 inches away from my models. And then with the skinks up there, I have a nasty little spell. It's not actually intended for skinks. It's Soul Cage, and what it means is, what I mainly use it for is you cast that on an enemy unit, and it has to go last in the combat phase. It has to go after everything else is fought. That's mainly what I want to use it for, against something nasty that I want to gang up on. But it also has the advantage that it also prevents that model or that unit from fleeing, like retreating. So the skinks wouldn't even be able to use their retreat anyway. The black coach went into the Pterodon Riders, and, well, that was that. So there we go. Ended up there. I lost a Spirit Host unit, kept everything else, kept all the models of everything else as well. Because the Hex Wraith did actually lose another wound, so I lost a Hex Wraith, but then I just brought it back with my general. Yeah. So, obviously what I'll be hoping to do is to come up against some different armies. I think there was someone who's played Stormcast, who'd been for a game. The Stormcast are... Some of their units get specific bonuses against Nighthaunt or Undead sometimes. Death armies. And they do get a few things with mortal wounds, and they can be quite nasty. Depends. There's such a huge range in Stormcast. So I'll be getting a few more. Around about Christmas time, we're going to be playing some 50 and 100 point games there as well. So I've been working out what I'm likely to take for that. So that's my first game there. So I will keep you informed. I'll hopefully as well try and take better pictures here and try and do a few more of these. They're not really proper battle reports, but the conclusion of it is that my opponent, the guy who played the Seraphon, now hates Banshees. He's seen the... I mean, it's one of these things. I think they are glass cannons. You duff them up. If you've got something to duff them up, you duff them up. And of course, bear in mind, I mean, I had an opening. It doesn't matter whether I had an opening or not, though, to be fair. And actually, I may have made a tactical error, because if I try going back, I'm just going to disable absolutely everything. I want to go back to the deployment thing, because I may have made a teensy tactical error, although obviously I got away with it. In when I set up, because I think, where's my opponent's first turn? Moving like that, so I brought in the Banshees where they were. What I maybe should have done is, instead of attacking the Slan, is attacks the Engine of the Gods. Because that Engine of the Gods, I think, would have done more damage to me than the Slan if it were. Even though the Slan has got some abilities. Because don't think of it, even though I said before about its spells being a bit crap, it has other abilities as well. So maybe the Engine of the Gods, though, was a bigger threat to me. Anything with mortal wounds is a huge threat. Even though it's quite weird saying that, because against most armies, not all, but against most, mortal wounds just bypasses all your army. It's a bit crap. I still get, as long as I remain within range of a hero, Deathless Minions, which is a 6-up save against mortal wounds, or indeed any wounds that have been, unsaved. So I've got something against it. Okay, 6 isn't that much, but I've got something against it. But it's the fact that because I have an unmodifiable armor save, that inevitably is included in the points cost of the units, and it's something that's completely bypassed. Whereas, other units that have maybe got a bit of an armor save could well be done over by rend anyway. So that's why it particularly scares me. And also, not that many models, really. So, I mean, in terms of wounds, it was whatever it was, I can't remember. But in terms of models, you've got 8 Banshees, 3 Spirit Hosts, that's 11, even though the Spirit Host is multi-wound. 5 Hex Race, that's 16. Black Coach, 17. 2 characters, 19. 19 models. So, mortal wounds, though, are scary to me. I mean, it was about 60 something, about 60, 61 maybe, wounds altogether, which is I suppose, a better way of looking at it rather than models. But yeah. So, but the Banshees have certainly proved themselves. That's why I took them specifically as an assassination unit. What is the thing that scares the shit out of me? Right, the Banshees are going for it. Because it's like in Sun Tzu's thing, that series I was doing, which I still have to do the last one, actually. Need to get that done. But the by far the best saying in it, attack what is weak, avoid what is strong. But if you can't avoid what is strong, you're going to have to come up with some way of dealing with it. And that's the Banshees. The Black Coach, absolutely awesome. Against anything, I'd be interested to see what it's going to be coming up against. The thing that I suppose would scare the Black Coach would be things with a lot of wounds, particularly if... I mean, lots of hits, because that's another thing. You can have Horde armies can be really scary as well. My Spirit Host into the Pterodon Riders did loads of damage, because... Not because they're particularly... I mean, they're... What is it now? They're... Because I think they only hit on 5s or something. So they only hit on 5s and wound on 4s. But they've got a lot of attacks. They've got 6 attacks each. That's 18 attacks going into them. And if I get a 6 to hit, it's a mortal wound as well. So, yeah, so many attacks that it could be quite scary. And that could scare even something like the Black Coach or artillery that's going to, not so much for the rend, but for the multi-wound attacks, you'd think. But mortal wounds will always be scary to me. There's no save at all. And it's quite nice having that 4-up save. Because when you think about, I've got a 4-up save that can't possibly be modified, it's almost like you've got twice as many wounds in the army as you actually have. It's not quite like that. But it's almost like that. So when that's taken away, yeah, that scares me. That does scare me. And high mobility, again, I was much more mobile than this army. I think mobility is a strength of Nighthaunts against an army that might outdo me on... And Stormcast Eternals are a classic example, because they can go in reserve as well. They can reserve in exactly the same way I can. The only difference is, when I come out of reserve, when I deploy, I have to deploy more than 9 inches away, but other than that, that's it. Stormcast Eternals, same thing, but they get a bonus if they end up in combat that turn. What? So they come out of the sky and get a bonus because it surprises everyone. I come up from the ground. I get nothing. So there you go. Never mind. So yeah, hopefully I'll come up against Stormcast. I'm quite looking forward to coming up against Stormcast army at some point. So there is my first battle. Let me know what you think in the comments below. As I say, I did make 2 errors. I forgot to mention one error I made as well. So the first error was I ran and charged. I'm naughty. But as I say, in the end, it shouldn't have made any sense. It was only my stupid, because I should have just cut through and I wouldn't need to run anyway. But also the fact, the game was gone then anyway. So it wasn't pivotal. And the other thing, also on the right-hand side with the Spirit House, at the end of the battle, I did make some Deathless Minion saves when I shouldn't have done, because I was at that point out of range of the General, or indeed any hero, but the General was the only hero that was ever anywhere near them. But that didn't save any wounds either, so they failed anyway. So I got away with it in the end, even though I made 2 crass errors. But again, it's just a case. So the cheat sheet helps with a lot of things, because the way I've got it set up, and I'll say I'll do a video specifically on it. It's for each phase. It's all the things I need to remember. It's just that sometimes you don't necessarily know what you need to remember. So when you're in the charge phase, for example, it doesn't say, maybe I should add to it in the charge phase in bold at the top, if you've run, do not bloody well charge. Although some units do get to run and charge, but you know, you can work that out as well. So thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed it, click the like button, subscribe for further content, and until next time, I will see you later.